Hello. Today we're covering price elasticity, a concept from economics that turns out to be one of the most practically useful ideas in all of marketing and business analytics. It answers a question that comes up constantly. If we change our price, how much will our sales volume change? And once you know that, you can make pricing and promotional decisions with real confidence rather than hoping for the best. Let's start with the problem. Here's the situation every brand's manager, category analyst, and pricing team faces regularly. You're thinking about raising your price. Maybe costs have gone up, maybe a competitor just raised theirs and you have an opportunity. Maybe you just want to improve margin. The question you need answered before you make that move is simple but surprisingly hard to answer without the right analysis. Will you make more money or less? A price increase might boost revenue per unit, but if it drives enough customers away, total revenue falls. Without knowing how price sensitive your customers are, you can't answer that question confidently in advance. Here's the key insight. A price change doesn't just change your price, it changes how many people buy. Those two effects, the price per unit and the volume sold, move in opposite directions when you raise price. And what happens to your total revenue depends on which effect is stronger. Price elasticity is the number that measures exactly how much demand changes when prices change. Get that number right, and you can model the revenue impact of any price move before you make it. Price elasticity of demand is a measure of how sensitive consumer demand is to a change in price. If it's expressed as a ratio, the percentage change in quantity sold divided by the percentage change in price. In plain English, it tells you how much your sales volume will move if you adjust your price, and by how much. The result is a single number, the elasticity coefficient, that summarizes your customer's price sensitivity in a form you can work with and communicate clearly. Let's apply this to a real scenario. Crunchco is a snack brand selling veggie chips at $4.99 a bag. The team is considering raising the price to $5.49, a 10% increase. Two questions need answering before they make that move. First, how much will volume drop when the price goes up? Second, after accounting for that volume drop, will total revenue be higher or lower? Price elasticity will answer both before Crunchco commits to the change. The formula is simple. Price elasticity equals the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. For Crunchco, the historical data shows that when the price goes up by 10%, volume tends to fall by 15%. So negative 15% divided by positive 10% equals negative 1.5. That's Crunchco's price elasticity coefficient. The negative sign is expected and normal. When price goes up, demand goes down. What matters for the analysis is the magnitude, 1.5. Let's look at what that number means. The elasticity coefficient falls into one of three zones, and each has a different strategic implication. Above 1, in absolute value, elastic means demand is very sensitive to price. A 10% price increase causes more than a 10% volume drop. Consumers are switching brands, delaying purchase, or buying less. Exactly 1, unit elastic, means demand moves proportionally with price. A 10% increase causes a 10% volume drop. And below 1, inelastic, means demand is not very sensitive. A 10% price increase causes less than a 10% volume drop. Consumers keep buying despite the higher price. Crunchco at negative 1.5 sits firmly in the elastic zone. Their customers are price sensitive. Here's the most important practical insight that comes from knowing your elasticity. If demand is elastic, your customers are price sensitive. Raising your prices reduces volume and it increases what you earn per unit. The net effect, total revenue falls. If demand is inelastic, your customers aren't very price sensitive. Raising your prices reduces volume slowly. You earn more per unit and you don't lose many units. Total revenue rises. For Crunchco at negative 1.5, the picture is clear. The demand is elastic, which means the proposed price increase will likely hurt total revenue, not help it. The higher price per bag won't compensate for the customers who stop buying. Here's the visual that makes this click. When you plot revenue, price times volume, across a range of prices from very low to very high, you get an inverted U shape. At very low prices, revenue is low because even though lots of people buy, you're earning almost nothing per unit. As the price rises, revenue climbs because the per unit gain outweighs the volume loss. At some point the curve peaks. That's the revenue maximizing price, the sweet spot where price and volume balance perfectly. Then as price continues to rise, volume drops off fast enough that total revenue starts falling. Crunchco's current price of $4.99 sits reasonably well on the curve, and the proposed $5.49 would push them slightly down the right-hand slope toward lower revenue. To make this spectrum intuitive, let's look at real examples on both ends. Highly elastic products, things with many close substitutes where switching is easy, include premium snacks, flavored waters, and non-essential personal care items. Raise the price meaningfully and consumers find something else. Highly inelastic products, necessities, or things with no close substitute include insulin, baby formula, and gasoline. People buy those regardless of moderate price changes because they have no meaningful alternative. One important nuance: the same products can be elastic in one competitive environment and inelastic in another. Brand strength, number of competitors, and consumer income levels all shift where a product sits on that spectrum. 5 factors determine how elastic or inelastic demand is for any given product. First, availability of substitutes. The more alternatives consumers have, the more elastic demand is. If they can switch easily, they will. Second, necessity versus luxury. Necessities tend to be more inelastic because people need them regardless of price. Third, brand loyalty. A brand with a strong, loyal following faces less elastic demands because loyal customers don't switch as readily. Fourth, price relative to income. Small ticket items often get less price scrutiny. A 50-cent increase on a $5 bag of chips can notice more than a $50 increase on a $5,000 appliance. And fifth, purchase frequency. Items bought weekly are watched more closely than items bought once a year. The most accurate way to measure price elasticity is from your own historical sales data. You take weekly sales volume and the corresponding retail price per week and run a regression analysis, a statistical method that isolates how much volume changes for each unit of price change, while controlling for other factors like seasonality and promotions. This approach captures actual consumer behavior and real purchase conditions, which makes it the most reliable measurement. Marketing mix modeling, which we covered in a previous video, can also produce elasticity estimates as part of its price variable modeling. So if you're running MMM anyway, elasticity often comes out of that same analysis. When historical sales data isn't available, for a new product, a new market, or a hypothetical price point you've never tested, survey methods can give you a directional estimate. Gabber Granger, for example, asked consumers whether they'd buy a series of specific price points. The rate at which yes answers drop as price increases implies an elasticity estimate. Van Westendorp maps the acceptable price range, giving you the floor and ceiling of consumer price tolerance. Both are useful for planning when data is scarce. The important caveat: these measure stated intents, not actual behavior. People often claim more price sensitivity in surveys than they actually exhibit at the shelf. Treat survey-based elasticity as directional, useful for framing the decisions, but less precise than historical data. Here's a related concept that's just as important for CPG brands: promotional price elasticity. This measures how much volume increases when you run a temporary price promotion. A 20% off sale, a buy one get one deal. For Crunchco, they run a 20% off promotion and volume doubles, a 100% increase. Promotional elasticity equals positive 100% divided by negative 20%, which gives minus 5. That's far more elastic than the regular price elasticity of minus 1.5. And this pattern is extremely common. Consumers respond much more strongly to visible sale than to a permanent price change. One critical implication: the promotional volume lift is largely temporary. When the promotion ends, much of the extra volume disappears because you attracted deal seekers who weren't converted to regular buyers. Let's bring the math together for the decision Crunchco is facing. At an elasticity of minus 1.5, a 10% price increase from $4.99 to $5.49 will drive roughly a 15% volume decline. Current revenue at $4.99 multiply by 100 units and you get $499. After the price increase at $5.49, multiply by the 85 units remaining after the 15% drop and you get $466.65. Revenue falls by about $32 for every 100 units. The price increase hurts. Crunchco should hold the price, at least for now. The more sustainable long-term play is to invest in building brand loyalty, better products, stronger brand equity, more loyal customers, which would reduce the elasticity coefficient over time and give them the pricing power to raise the price without losing revenue. Let's be balanced. Price elasticity strengths, when measured from historical data, is grounded in actual consumer behavior, not what people say they do, but what they actually did at the register. It directly informs pricing and promotional decisions in a way that's clear, quantifiable, and easy to communicate to leadership. And it connects price strategy to revenue outcomes with a clarity that gut never can feel. The limitations? Historical elasticity reflects the conditions of the past. If your competitive landscape shifts, a new brand enters, or economic conditions change, your elasticity coefficient changes with it. Survey-based methods overstate sensitivity. A single elasticity number can mask significant variation by channel, retailer, and customer segment. And promotional elasticity often overstates long-term price sensitivity because promotions attract deal seekers who wouldn't buy at full price and don't become loyal customers. 7 things to take with you. Elasticity equals the percentage change in demand divided by the percentage change in price. That's the core formula. Elastic demand above 1 means price-sensitive customers. Raising price reduces total revenue. Inelastic demand below 1 means not very sensitive. Raising price increases total revenue. Measure it from historical sales data whenever possible, because that gives you the most accurate read. Promotional elasticity is almost always much higher than regular price elasticity. Consumers respond more to sales than to permanent price changes. And that promotional volume lift is largely temporary. Deal seekers aren't loyal buyers. And finally, the most sustainable way to reduce your elasticity over time is to build a genuinely loyal brand, because loyal customers are less likely to switch when the price goes up. Thank you for watching.